This episode is sponsored by a company who has truly found a solution to an age-old problem, and that is Karna bunker gear. One of the most prevalent conversations in the fire service is should we or should we not train in our bunker gear? Now, the answer to both is yes. As most of us are aware, the carcinogens from structure fires, of which there are over 260 that are dangerous to human health, not to mention the PFAS and other chemicals that are within our gear from the manufacturing process, are factors that we obviously want to minimize. Now, the other side of the coin is that we do need to train in our gear. There is no way to acclimatize the heat retention and lack of mobility than to actually wear the gear. So seeing this problem himself, firefighter and exercise physiologist Ryan Conley developed a carcinogen-free gear at a much lower cost that can be used in non-IDLH atmosphere and training that does not require puncture or tear resistance. Now, as someone who always trained in gear myself throughout my career, I wish this technology was around then. And I got to test it personally while coaching my tactical athlete class a few weeks ago, and can testify that it not only simulates the heat retention of frontline gear, but also the lack of mobility, which is imperative at operating at a high level on the fireground. Now, some additional benefits include being able to doff the gear when you do get banged out for a call, increasing the lifespan of your frontline bunker gear, and then also public education. Think of the number of times that we allow, for example, school children to wear our gear when it's infused with all these carcinogens. So there are so many real-world applications for a fraction of the cost of IDLH-rated bunker gear. So if you want to hear the whole story behind this, listen to my conversation with Ryan Conley on episode 1175 of the Behind the Shield podcast, or go to karnabunkergear.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show former ice skater, ice skating coach, and the founder of Vestibular Training Services, Sheila Thelen. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from her journey into the world of ice skating as a child, entering the world of coaching, discovering the behavioral and mental health elements of youth athletes, her revelation that the spinning that they do in ice skating was actually helping a host of other issues, understanding the vestibular system, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, performance amidst chaos, vertigo, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Sheila Thelen. Enjoy. Well, Sheila, I want to start by saying two things. Firstly, thank you so much for the exposure to what we're going to talk about today in St. Pete a few weeks ago. And secondly, I want to welcome you today onto the Behind the Shield podcast.
Well, I'm honored. I'm so excited to be here. And it's really important work that you're doing. So I'm truly honored to get to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
I'm in Minneapolis. I'm about an hour north of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's cold. It's snowing. It snows here a lot. So I was dressed really warm in these podcasts, but it is really chilly here. So
it's even cold in Florida. I mean, not that it's anywhere near your cold, but we were 27 degrees last night, which for Florida sounds, pretty chilly. So,
ooh, you're gonna die. Yeah.
All right. Well, you have such an interesting journey into the technology that we're going to talk about in this conversation. So let's start at the very beginning. Tell me where you were born And tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
So I was born in Minneapolis, kind of we've always been in the Minnesota area. And I'm an only child, which is both a good story and a bad story. But I learned some early leadership in that. I got married. I'm a super happy married person. That's where I talk about a lot of my success comes from my husband, who's fabulous and super supportive, and is in on these projects. He helps me in so many ways. Had 2 kids. They're adults now, so they're no hassle yet. Now they help me. So I talk about all those years of parenting. Now they're helping me. So I'm really grateful for that. And I've had a really fabulous life, and I've really achieved, especially in figure skating, like as a master coach and as business owner, and all the different projects I've done, and all the Olympic coaches and general coaches that I've worked with all over the world. I've had it's been amazing. But this transition to this new project for the general public has been fascinating. And I always talk about, like, you talk about having companies and your friends being supportive. And I had a whole batch of coaching buddies be like, stay in your lane, only stay in figure skating. You're already, tops of the group. Why do more? And the concept of getting out of my lane, trying something totally new because I knew I could help so many people has just been this really challenging project, but I had a lot of support and I had a lot of no support, at the same time. So it's been fun to see how I ebbed and flowed through it, but how my friends and my family have seen the projects.
I want to go back to your early life. Just while we're talking about the skating community, there was a tragic plane accident a little while ago. Talk to me about the impact of that on your community.
So on that plane were some on the top coaches and the future of figure skating. And my personal part to the story is I was friends with one of the coaches. We really crossed paths through many other coaches. Amazing coach, even with Disney on Ice as a performer, famous. Yet at the same time, the entire Livingston family was lost on that plane. And the future, but the concept of the whole family gone was hard. I was completely convinced that day that somewhere they had a dog and a hamster. I don't know where I came up with it, but I was convinced they had a dog and a hamster somewhere in daycare because they'd been gone for a week at the developmental camp and nationals. And I thought for sure, like, I was ready to get in the car, drive to Virginia, and go track down their dog and their hamster. And so then I convinced the entire East Coast coaching staffs that we had to go find the dog. And actually, the dog was with the nanny, luckily, and the hamster had died a couple months before. So, there was no hamster. But at the same time, it was crushing to lose all that talent and all of these children's futures. Developmental teams and kids and families. And of course, the big story coming out of it even this week at U.S. Nationals is that Max, who lost both of his parents, qualified for the senior men's Olympic team. To rise from the flame, it's a very Phoenix-like story. So there's so much in developing them, but seeing them as people and athletes and children and where that falls, it's just, it was hard.
Yeah. I saw the video of Max holding the photo of his parents after he won that. And it was, this is the beautiful thing about tribalism and community in the positive way is, you don't have to know these people to feel the heartbreak, and like you said, especially an entire family. That's absolutely tragic. So just kind of wanted to hit that tangent while something recent.
Yeah, it was hard. It's still hard. Reality, the real parts of our lives, and all the pieces that don't matter and all the pieces that do matter.
Absolutely. Well, going back to your timeline then. So what did your parents do when you were young? What were their professions?
So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but then eventually became a realtor and then a real estate closer. And my dad was early computers, like the early world of computers. And so it was kind of cool to see that growing up. Yet at the same time, I grew up in a volatile family. My dad was a manic, depressive alcoholic, and I always joke I was born just so that he could get out of Vietnam. So I'm not sure how much he was really into parenting, yet at the same time he got out of Vietnam. So go Gary. But the twist is he died quite young. He died at like 51, and so it was this transition early in my marriage of I had this new baby, and then my dad died, and so I feel like my mom turned into my second kid. And so there's a weird leadership twist in seeing your parents, come and go also. And so I learned quickly about taking care of myself that if something happened to my spouse, and I think there's a really hard transition, especially as you see your parents, that what your mom knows compared to what your dad knows. And when one is gone, how do they survive?
It's sad yet so interesting how many people have come on here, and I'm literally at about 1,200 now, where there is generational trauma. I think it's almost impossible to be a human being and not have an element of that. And some is obviously more acute than others. Some might just not be feeling loved by a parent, or one parent leaves, or, it might be more, domestic abuse and sexual abuse and some of these more acute things that we hear. But this is a common theme. And what's so beautiful about these conversations today is that people are finally opening up about this stuff. Because I think if you can actually look at these falling dominoes, our generation now can say, I'm not going to let that fall on my child, or I'm going to minimize the impact on my child. So as tragic as it is hearing how many, turbulent households a lot of my guests grew up in, the fact that we can see it, acknowledge it, forgive our parents for whatever happened, and then grow and heal from it. I think it's so important.
Absolutely. And I feel like I really moved on. I really grew up quickly. I stood on my own 2 feet. My favorite story is my dad. I remember asking at 18 how much money they'd saved for me to go to college. And he looked at me like, why? You're a girl. Why would we send you to college? And I was like, what? Like this was new news to me. Like what? That was crazy. And so he bet me $500 I couldn't graduate from college in 4 years because I was just a girl and I wasn't going to be serious about this. And I still remember holding that certified check for $500, after I put myself through school. And, but the concept of, I also feel like standing on your own 2 feet, being strong, stepping forward. No matter what the situation was, I dug it out, but the choices that I made along the way, I felt were really key. Like I did get that college degree. I did live overseas. I did marry well. And I want to go back to that piece, like the marrying the perfect person is what really so much of my success lies from, because I could raise the kids and my husband really participated, so I could take on these projects. I wasn't buried in my own life, and that teamwork, so I was talking about the team of Scott and Sheila really could build a lot no matter what the situation, whether it was good or bad, or my mom or my dad or his parents or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, like all of the pieces that were happening around us. We really had a stability in our family that the others didn't.
When you reflect back now, what are the ingredients that created such a great relationship in your marriage?
We're both here to pitch in. We're both in it, the project together. And we almost had to team up to fight our own families. Team Scott and Sheila got things done, and in a fun and happy and loving way, that we dug in, and how we covered hours. And initially our first child, he was quite sickly as a child. And so Nobody would babysit for us. Nobody, so we talked about like we covered 24/7 for about 4 or 5 years. And he perked up. He's fine. He's healthy. It's no big deal. But you for a couple of years, I'm like, I have an eye twitch, man. So, like I haven't slept for a couple of days, and but I always felt like it was our stability that could allow more stability around us. And we did projects and we home renoed and I got really good at a chop saw. Like I'm really good at laying tile. Like we did projects together and built out houses and finished houses and had a great time doing it. So like I always look at I've had a really fun life, especially in the last 35 years. It's been really fun to the point like it really offsets some of the crazy of my childhood. It all kind of 6, 7, like yeah, it's totally fine. Like I'm a really happy adult, and I think that's from a great marriage.
How old were you when you started ice skating?
I was old. I was probably about 10, 9 or 10. So that was significantly old in the sport. So many start at 2, 3, 4, is really a common starting age in the sport. And there were limited funds. I got good, but I don't know that I was never great. I was never like a great athlete. I feel like I became a better coach than I was a skater. But, I learned a lot and I was really coachable. So as I met other high level coaches, I really learned from them. And it changed my entire career path. I also am really weirdly good at fixing things. So if you show me a problem, I'm really good at fixing it. So if you show me an athlete with a problem, I'm really good at fixing the technique and getting them to move correctly. So I'm really good at fixing things. So I can look at a problem and I'm a fixer. And that was really fun. And some of the early products we came up with and bungee cords tied from their hand to their foot to make them move as a unit. And it was one of my early products called Champion Cords. But like I learned the basics of like a patent and, packaging and pricing. And, a lot of people helped me in the early years of that company coming forward. And that really, of course, then you learn all the other things. You learn about websites. You learn about Visa cards, how to take Visa cards. You remember the olden days? Like I learned all that. All those little pieces of production and manufacturing and how to do it here in the States was really paramount in how I built out the other pieces of my other companies.
You mentioned about starting late. In your opinion, what is the right age for a young skater if they are looking to actually get to kind of Olympic level?
3, 4, 5. Yeah. Like we're talking young, I actually, at one point I coached Herb Brooks's grandchildren from Miracle on Ice, the really famous hockey coach, Miracle on Ice, Herb Brooks, who's from Minnesota. So I got to work with Kelly's kids, but the 2 twin boys, they were doing crossovers at 2 years old. Like we had 2-year-olds out there learning crossovers and being really forward and backward crossovers at 2. Phenomenal skaters. The boys really turned into phenomenal skaters. But it's a sport you start young because especially that gliding motion is so not natural. It really takes an entire lifetime to still learn that motion.
So what made you start at 10 years old and how far behind do you think you were as far as that traditional track?
Oh, miles behind, but I loved it. It was fun. It started out as a Christmas gift. My grandparents had got me ice skates. It's Minnesota. Had bought me a pair of my own ice skates. I didn't have to rent them. I got my own skates. And it came with a skating lesson. Like they signed me up for Saturday skating lessons. And I loved it, And I still, as I skate across the ice today, I'm like, I can't believe I know how to do this. It's so much fun. Skating is so much fun. And my brain just lit up and enjoyed it and thought it was fun and challenging and hard and unlimited funds. And could I watch other kids and figure out how they did it? And my friends were all skaters. And I was talking about, like, I don't go to high school reunions, but every time I go to a skating competition, all my friends are there. So the skating community really was phenomenal and really kind and loving. And whether you were winning or losing, the group was lovely. So yeah, I started out at the Burnsville, Minnesota Valley Figure Skating Club, as a kid, and the club's still there. I think of them often, but I've kind of moved up.
I've talked about this a lot. There are a lot of sports in the States where it's pretty evident that a high school or a college is more concerned about the performance of that athlete than the wellness and longevity of that athlete. And you meet a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s that are now very deconditioned, don't play any sport, and got hurt or burned out on sports when they were at that high level. Do you see the same thing in ice skating, or is it something that people tend to keep doing?
A lot of them continue on, like they still do edge class years later, kind of like ballerinas that still do bar class. I have a lot that still continue to come back and visit, like come see their coaches, especially as they head off to college and get married and have kids. We get invited to all those events, which really I think talks about coaching, and really understanding, that there's a kid involved. They're not replaceable. And I have so many fantastic former athletes that still stay in contact. But even during like Christmas break or Easter break, or they're back home from college, that they're back skating with us and hanging out. And that always feels so good. Like the kid misses us. That's an honor. That's the whole point of coaching. The word coach actually comes from get the old British example of you get into the little coach with the horse and the carriage, and it would take you from one location to your destination that you're choosing to go to. That's what a coach is. And so that's what's our job as a coach, is to get the athlete from here to their goals. And that's the importance of being a coach, is getting them to their destination.
When I think of skating, and I used to skate, I don't know how this even happened, but I went to a junior school and they did a great job. I think it was in the summer, we would go to the pool on a Wednesday. And then in the winter, we would go to an ice rink, which was, a little ways away. So as young kids, we're exposed to all these different things. And I was very, very fortunate. But even at that very low level, because we weren't really being coached, we just got to skate around. Ice is very unforgiving when you fall. So how were you able to safely build up an athlete's confidence so that fear after a bad fall didn't just make them want to leave the ice for good?
That's an excellent question. I don't know. We all got over it because it's a falling sport. It's a very much a falling sport. And there are times on a session I fell 40 times, 50 times. Like I fell a lot as a kid. And it's a trial and error, but it's a learning. And I have to say, it's almost impossible to be perfect at it. So the sport kind of draws in people that are perfectionists and forces them not to be perfectionists. So watch them struggle, and that I find fascinating in the sport. But there's a resiliency to it. There's you fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you get back up. You fell in front of 3,000 people. Well, you got back up, and you still stood there and you still curtsied and someone interviewed you and you didn't cry, Wow, it's a tough sport, so. And I always talk about too that like you can always tell when someone screws up. You don't have to know anything about figure skating. They fell.
Yeah.
It's obvious. Like it's an obvious error. Even on a step or a spin or like it's a super obvious error sport. You can tell they screwed up. Mm-hmm.
So let's go to the conversation that you and I had when we first spoke about the interaction with coaches from other sports and your observation of your athletes versus some of the issues they were having with their children.
So the story backs up to is about 10 years ago. I was in Lake Placid speaking at an event. So I'm there and we're back at the hotel, adult beveraging. Okay, just that all seems to be part of the story, which is weird because I don't drink that much, but we're adult beveraging. Back at the hotel, and there's a whole group of coaches kind of standing in the area at Lake Placid, and we're all talking about problems within our sports. And the coach next to me says he has a problem with dizzy athletes. And I'm looked at him like, what? Like, no, like in figure skating, even the little ones, like you can spin them like crazy. And when you watch my videos, I'm talking spin them like crazy and they don't get dizzy. And I looked at him like, oh, that's so weird. But that's sort of like the little red light in my head. And then the next coach talked about he had some pretty dumb athletes. And I looked at him like, what? No, not figure skaters. Like those little figure skaters. I mean, I have 8th graders taking college trig, like what? So they kind of went around this whole list of problems and I had none of them. And I was like, wait a second here. So like the lights are going off in my head. Like, what are we doing differently than all the other sports? And the answer is spinning. And even ballerinas don't spin like we do in figure skating. So like I started really looking at the next 5 years of like, why was spinning special? And what did spinning do compared to all the other sports and all the other academic processes? So I started really digging in let's just say it, in an obsessive kind of way. Anyone that would talk to me, doctors, PTs, OTs, like anybody that would talk to me about what we thought was happening in the brain from spinning and what was it doing that was magical compared to all the other sports. And that is going to take the whole discussion to the vestibular system, which is that inner ear. So it's right inside my ear. So here's like my eardrum. Here's my eardrum. It vibrates into the vestibular system and it rolls out to the cochlea. So you'll see like a kid with a cochlea implant who's deaf. But this little puppy controls everything. And that's where I deep dive into complete obsession of how can we train this and help this and treat it like a muscle, like you would in bench press or a leg press or running. Like how can we train this as much as we train the body and change people's lives? And this, it all comes to this.
So these experts talk to me about the fluid and the crystals that they think are responsible for this application.
So the vestibular system, they always refer to it as 3 semicircular canals. And on the inside of the canal is like a hair follicle. And on the outside is what little lumpy chunks that they call crystals. And they're little chunky things. So you'll hear people say, I have crystal problems. And what's happened is that those crystals has moved out of the outer chamber and down into the gel. So it's kind of like trying to drive data around a whole bunch of parked cars. Like the data is not moving quickly from your eyes and ears. It's moving around all these lumpy chunks. And we see it a lot in people that like ride in Humvees, like, like those military guys, that those crystals are a problem. Concussions, horseback riding. Okay, more concussions. They're concussed. Rodeo. Woo, so many accidents in rodeo. Joggers, aging. Just as we get older, those crystals, they'll move and you're just not processing like you used to. But this vestibular system is connected to 30 major functions. But the 4 we focus on in our company is balance, cognitive, spatial, and sleep. And I just obsess about those 4 topics. Can I improve your balance? Can I speed up your brain? Can I get those crystals back in place so that the data is moving better? Can I help you with spatial? Especially the concussion people. I really have good success in spatial. And then sleep. Boy, if we can improve everyone's sleep, your life just got better. So I really have become obsessed with how those 4 factors really factor into people's lives.
Everything that I'm presented with, I always look back as a kind of evolutionary lens. Does this make sense? So a good example, the carnivore diet does not make sense to me because ancient humans did not have access. Up until very recently, we did not have access to enough meat to eat all day long. So does it work? It seems to with some people. Does it make sense to me? No, absolutely not. But what you are doing in the carnivore diet is you're removing all the processed shit. So that's probably the ultimate secret sauce in that diet as well. What are the evolutionary things or the lack thereof in modern society that is contributing to the gumming up of this fluid and the concentration of the crystals?
So there's a lot of things. And I would just even say aging process alone. Like we start to see problems in the vestibular system, even in 19 and 20-year-olds. Okay. And my favorite example is the spinning teacups at Disney World. Okay. Your kids are like, yes. And you're like, no, I'm going to die. Like you don't see people over 30 on those spinning teacups. If they do, they look like they might die. Like their grandma and grandpa don't look happy on the spinning teacups. I've had people come to me to train for it so they could do the spinning teacups at Disney World in front of their kids, which cracks me up. It's a training program for Disney, but we, but it makes sense, like if you're not processing, the space around you, you're struggling, you're slow. And that's been some of our really cool projects of more pre and post testing that we've been able to track these pieces of balance and tracking cognitive. And you got to do that too, which was fun when we were in Tampa together. How can we pre and post test and see these changes? The Apple Watches, the Aura Rings, all these things that I also think in the olden days we would have called woo-woo science. We can prove so much of that now. There's so much good pre and post. You can really see it's not woo-woo, which is important. And I think, and I look at some of those old like Chinese remedies and some of the old, ancient secrets, that I think have been lost. I just read a paper talking about how Rockefeller was really involved in early healthcare in convincing people that you could only get help from a real doctor. Only a real doctor could help you, not what your grandma did and not castor oil and not, there's an old joke about Windex, I did that. It's a weird analogy, but like this whole concept that only one group of people could help you. But Rockefeller had early healthcare systems. So of course he made money off of that. So like when you follow back the money, which I just hate, that decisions are made based on that versus overall health. There's been a big transition in how the health of our communities, and I'm going to go back to the obvious one, looking at phones all day, looking at cameras all day and screens all day. What is that doing to our health? I'm not sure I need a paper on that. I know that's not healthy. Like I don't need a paper. I can just figure that out on my own. I can look at generations of kids versus my grandparents, in quality of life. And I can see that. I don't need a paper.
The common denominator in a lot of these conversations seems to result with the idea if we just did what our grandparents did, what we did 100 years ago, you'd probably have a pretty good lifestyle. And my wife came to St. Pete, and you met her as well, and she's a doctor of optometry. And, we have these conversations where she's seeing all these issues with the eye in a lot of these young people now because their focus is just fixed on the screen, or if they are learning, again, it's on a computer these days, and they're not getting that long distance and that change of focus, which is not, challenging the eye. They're not processing the same way. The actual muscles themselves aren't being used as much. So, it all makes perfect sense. Our life is so abnormal at the moment. And, we talked a while ago, ancient man and woman, we would have been running around and rolling and, doing all kinds of a lot more childlike movement, I would imagine, than being stuck on a chair for 8-9 hours at a time.
Right. I talk about men standing, as a young man, as a 7-year-old boy, you would have stood shoulder to shoulder with your dad and the other men of the village figuring out how to take down the mastodon. Like you wouldn't have been sitting in front of a screen all day with no phys ed, no activities, just having someone talk to you all day long. That isn't how we grew up as humans, and even just the education, how much has changed from your and my education to what they're doing in the schools these days. It's very, very different. And just even class management, like I think these new teachers have it hard, really, really, really hard, even compared to the class management of our generation.
Absolutely. Well, I think a good example of comparing maybe a group that hasn't had any exposure to this with an athlete that has, you showed me a video of pilots doing the centrifuge. So talk to me about that. One, if I'm not mistaken, was one of your athletes, ice skaters.
The first boy is spinning, and they call it a Barney chair. So imagine it as a sitting chair with a little rail around it, and they're kind of perched on it with their upper body, and then they turn their heads. So they have their heads in different positions, but it's like a spinning, rotating chair. So of course the chair stops, and the first boy sits up and looks like he's going to vomit. He's literally looks like he has epilepsy. Like the kid is like cannot function with his head or his shoulders or his back. And you can tell he's so severely dizzy, he's non-functioning. And we always joke about that video being like, that's the kid I don't want to fly with. Okay, like it's an Army Air Force video. Like this boy is gonna kill us all. Like we don't want to fly with that kid. Whereas then, of course, my athlete, who's in the video, she's probably about 25, but like she grew up in spinning, figure skating, super, super, super spinning. And so when they stop the chair, so she's spinning, and if you've seen my fast videos, the spin is in this chair, this Barney chair, is slow compared to what my athletes used to. So it's nothing to her. So of course they stop. She lifts her hands perfectly, totally balanced, 100% alert. Focused, done, ready, let's go. Like, and if you've seen the movie Top Gun, you'd want to fly with my pilot, not the other pilot, especially as the plane's flipping and turning and twisting and, but life flips and turns and twists, like we all talk about like real movement in real life that so many people can't do, much less even, I'm fascinated, people just walking and turning their head and walking and turning their head. And people get dizzy from that. And I'm like, oh goodness, like that's terrifying. But it's all back to that vestibular system. But it goes back to training it and how that affects you in real life.
When you put me through your what would you call the actual device?
So we have two systems. One is a fly system and one is a rail system. And,
okay.
And basically spinning, this like a spinning lazy Susan that I can control the speed and the direction. So I can control, and really we start so slow. Like when you watched your videos, you and your wife's videos, we're spinning quite slow. And we've really done a lot of work on spinning fast and the chaos of that, yet the spinning slow and longer and the durability of that, in both programs work great.
So when I was on the rail system, and they did it a little bit faster the second time when I went back. But you had me count to 30, and the whole concept is being able to be calm amidst chaos. So expand on that, because obviously the people listening now, that's the an imperative part of our profession, to be able to have all these things going on, and sirens and lights and fires and heat and everything, people screaming, and still be able to focus on painting the room with our hand and looking for the child that might be hiding under the bed.
Right. So this actually came to us from the fire department, and they called it time warp. And time warp, what they described it as is you're in a fire, you think you've been in there for 4 minutes, and really you've been in there an hour. And now the team could die, because they've lost track of time in the chaos. And we had reverse stories of that too. Some of my elite shooters from the military talked about, as snipers, being there with the gun and on their gut. They've been there for 2 hours, 3 hours, check their watch. It's been 5 minutes. So like time moving too quick and time moving too slow. So the argument was, could we train that? Could we train chaos and control of time in chaos? And we all have that story of a car accident that happened in slow motion, or the meeting that never ended. Like I've had lessons. I'm like, okay, the clock is moving backwards. It's not, it's it only been 5 minutes? This kid's killing me. So can we train that? And the weird part is we have been trying to really train that. And we've had really good success with it. In finding 30 seconds in especially that third set of spins where your body is starting to feel the chaos. Even some fight or flight. I have a lot of people that break out in a sweat from spinning, okay? Because they're fighting, fight or flight, their brain's like, that short lady's trying to kill you, But as we train that and find more zen and calm and to be able to turn that off and to understand what's going on around you, can we train that? And we're getting more and more successful with it. But it takes time and it takes training. And that's part of where we love that fly system. I didn't have one there for you, but that fly system is really chaos training. So who really loves my fly system? And imagine, once again, the electric spinner, it gets you spinning, and then I hoist you into the air in a body harness and a spreader bar, so you spin like crazy. Some faster than others. You got to train it. The kids are better at it than the adults. Let's just be honest. Okay. But I have a couple of 8-year-old girls that can beat every Navy SEAL on the planet because they're just so good at it. But it takes time and training. But can we find control in chaos? And I'm even fascinated. Nobody can do it at first, but within 3-4 weeks, we can get you pretty close to 30 seconds. I was surprised that even my friend who's a CPR specialist, like she's a CPR teacher, she knows that rhythm, she counted it in her CPR brain and she was still 4 seconds off. And I'm like, wow, like of anyone that I thought could nail this was her. Although I do have to add in one caveat, I have had one person nail this at 30 seconds and they had autism. But that brain, boom, right on 30 seconds, right on the nose. I was like, how'd you do that? Because normal people can't, find 30 seconds, much less in chaos. It's hard.
Well, I think I hit it right at 30.9 or 31. So that means I'm probably borderline.
You're
on the
pretty
spectrum
close.
too.
Yeah. You're in that group, but there's very few people that can really do that. It's a really hard skill. That to find 30 seconds is hard enough, but to find it in chaos it'll save your life. It could save a lot of people's lives, and I think it's a piece of control that is key in success, but I think it's also a key of controlling time, even in trauma. I feel like it can cut down some of the trauma because you had more control in the situation.
When I did the martial arts for most of my life, if you're doing a spinning kick, you're whipping your head around, locking on the target, and then kicking. In dance class, people that do a pirouette, you see they spot, so that head turns around and captures that place again. That's not the case with skating, though, is it? So explain to me the difference.
It spins right past you. You gotta keep it. It's a challenge.
So how are our skaters able to? I mean, we're talking about vestibular system in itself, but if these dancers are spotting so they don't lose balance, what are our skaters doing that are, because they don't have that tool, they're just moving so fast. How are they able to overcome that? Or is it simply exactly what we're talking about, this just training the vestibular system?
Training. It was just training because we're taught to let it just go past you, And I have some really fun videos of the kids holding my phone while they're flying in rotation and just watching it whip past you. It's just, it's fascinating. Although one of the rooms that we shot the video in was kind of like a darker ballet room. So it had a set of windows and like a darker corner that the light just didn't quite hit. So it got a light and a dark, and it felt very strobe-y. To the point I'm like, well, I don't know if this is a good idea. We're not trying to strobe the kid, you know what I mean? We're not trying to do that. But when I got a different training room with better lighting, it seemed a little nicer for the kids. They seem to adapt to it better. But we just teach it as it just rolls through. And so maybe it really is a better sense of proprioception, of feeling your body in space when your eyes aren't giving you enough data. So those figure skaters adapt, and they adapt young, which is fun to see.
Well, let's start with performance, and we're going to go back to some of the other areas that we touched on before. In any area at all, what have you seen as far as the impact on performance after using this training?
So we see a ton of improvement. So my favorite thing to test is I use a company called Balance Tracking Systems. So, and you got to do it too, where you stand on a solid plate and it tracks your balance and how much you sway and that sway movement, of how much you wiggle in your feet, in your head, like how much you're really moving. And it tracks centimeters of movement, but it also tracks how you moved. And the ellipse of the circle, are you like really left, right, north, south, east, west, or are you in a really tight linear space? Or do you really lean to the left because you got a bad hip and that right hip or knee or ACL still acts up? So when you get nervous, you're going to bounce to that left hip because you trust it more. So like this balance tracking systems is phenomenal. They're based out of California. Love them. I don't own the company. Go them. But we track what they call a modified CAT SIB, which is basically tracking your sensory integrated into your balance. And what it really is 20-second size open, 20-second size closed. Then we add a blue foam, like a foamy foam that really gets gushy underneath you. And then we do another 20-second size open and 20-second size closed. So in the performance world, first of all, I just track your balance. And what do we see? We see a lot. Okay, we see injury, we see old injuries that we thought healed, but your brain doesn't think is healed. Because once again, you got nervous and you made that shift. We see a lot, and we see people struggle on that foam, especially the aging population. You put foam under their feet, and I talked about that's how we killed off Harriet. Like it's really, really, really hard for them. And I have to spot them. And I have a whole batch of clients that can't even stand on foam. There's no way that uneven surface, they can't even stand, much less close their eyes. So that's a really, really obvious level of vestibular, either going great for the kids or going downhill for the adults. So we love testing that, then spinning, and then post-testing it and seeing what I did literally to your brain, because that inner ear controls your balance. So many people think balance comes from our feet, but it's really coming from our inner ears. So that's where, right off the bat, performance, I have a huge impact on performance. With really shocking data changes after just one session with me, like shocking data, especially in the concussion community. So I made the jump already performance already to concussion.
Let's do it.
And the fact but we look at it as the same thing. Like performance and rehabilitation in our company is the same thing. It's not two separate entities. So I deal with performance, I deal with concussion, I deal with aging, I deal with Parkinson's, I deal with autism, I deal with injury. Like I deal with everyone with a brain. And we see data changes on all of them in just one session.
In the mental health space, this is becoming more and more of a prevalent conversation. If we reframe mental health to forging performance, you would basically do most of the same exact things that are good for your mental health as well. Now, I'm not talking about someone in crisis. That takes a little more intervention, but most of us that are kind of, not circling the drain, but the water's getting a little shallow now. You start doing breath work, you start doing meditation, you take walks without your phone, you journal. These are going to help calm your mind. Now, when you're in a fire or a gunfight, you are going to be more likely to get into a flow state, more likely to be in that calm and chaos. If you don't do any of that work and you have that busy mind, yes, you could head towards depression and anxiety, but also when you're asked to go and do that CPR algorithm, cardiac, drug calculations at 3 a.m. on a 4-year-old, same exact thing. That busy mind isn't going to let you be the top level that you need to as a paramedic. So what I'm, love about this is, rather than framing it with more of a kind of victim mentality, which we have in the past, everything from TBI to mental health. Now we're looking at let's look at performance, which is going to get a lot more buy-in, but the beautiful thing is, behind the curtains, you're also positively affecting your mental health or your concussion.
That is thank you. That was beautiful. Like absolutely framed perfectly, because really it's the same thing, and I deal with, I deal with everyone the same. If you have autism, I spin you just like I spin Harriet at 78 years old. You know what I mean? Like I'm spinning everybody the same. And we talked about it's so nice and individualized, like I can start slow. And I always talk about my job is just to get your brain up to activity and kind of get it kicking. but not to go beyond. Like, I'm not trying to make you barf, because everyone assumes when they see me teach spinning stuff that everyone's going to vomit. And that's never the case. Nobody pukes with me. Nobody. Mostly because that's gross and I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm not going to clean that up, but it's on me. Because just like a trainer in a gym, if I work you out until you vomit, I'm a bad trainer. Okay, and I'm not talking about Navy SEALs, and they got a whole insane training program. Like, that's not normal in a lot of ways. But in the same breath too, like, can I train you? Can I get your brain activated? And that's all I need. So I have people that are done with me in 3, 4, or 5 minutes, and it's fascinating to kind of see that threshold on every single person. And it starts slow, and it just can keep getting faster and faster. But once again, at some point too, the goal isn't so much faster. The goal is longer and slower to really get that gel to move through that vestibular system, to get that flow state. I have a couple of trainers that are brilliant at getting people to flow. And when you were down at the Biooptimization Institute in Tampa, Florida, out of St. Pete's, they're so good at oxygen and, red light and, the PEMF mats and, and all of those are fantastic, because of course I think my product's great, but I think when you tie it in with 2 or 3 other great modalities, wow, we can really see success for that person in their own individual ways. Almost kind of like Tetris. Like, what's their problem? One of those companies is going to really kind of fill in the holes of the Tetris to get it all nice and even.
Absolutely. What are some of the success stories that you've seen with TBI, concussion, that kind of background?
Oh my gosh, we just had a white paper come out. I'm going to tear up over the white paper. We had 52 people, all different ages, adults, kids. We eventually shifted out the kids, and we showed a 22% improvement, in balance and vestibular and cognitive and spatial and all of these things. And we have even more papers coming out on this with the data. The first one was the 22% improvement in balance. Now we're working on the one with Axon Brain for tracking cognitive, and we're just seeing beautiful data changes of really just speeding up that brain. I recently had a top trainer with the NFL in, and who sped up his brain by 6 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, but what would 6 seconds do to an NFL player? If I could speed your brain up by 6 seconds, what would that change? But one of my little girls, I had a little second grader in 2 days ago who sped her brain up by 55 seconds. Okay, well, same thing. Can I speed up second graders by a huge margin? And what'll that do for her in school and in sports and in academics and, in her life? You could just watch her brain just kick in and go for it. That's exciting, and that it's all vestibular. I want to think I'm the one that came up with it, but I'm not. There's already 55,000 papers already published on vestibular. So they're there. So hit pubmed.gov, and my favorite part is you can, in the search engine, you do vestibular plus, stress, vestibular plus mental health, vestibular plus balance, vestibular plus autism, vestibular plus aging, you can really get that search engine to hone in on how vestibular is really the academic results in fixing it and really getting it moving correctly. The outcomes are amazing.
Well, speaking of academics, you mentioned about talking to these other coaches originally and them having issues from relationships to grades to, ability to focus, et cetera, et cetera. Were you able to take any of their athletes and put them through the program?
So my game has been, I'm working with everyone with a brain. So I've been working with everyone, and it's been really, really fun, especially in some things that I didn't understand the outcomes could be. We're doing a big project. Actually, it's in the early phases, but at the University of Minnesota, out of their neuro-urology department. Okay, I got to think that through a second. Neuro-urology, because crazy statistics. 10% of 10-year-old kids don't stay dry at night. Okay, that's millions of kids that aren't staying dry. So they're not having their buddies over. They're not, going out. They're not spending the night at grandma's. It's really hard on the family. And these kids are suffering. Like really, that's a huge problem. And these kids are really, really suffering. And it's going into 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. Much less the aging population with the same problem, but on a different track. And we're doing a big research project with the U of M because they really think we're the missing link in getting that nervous system to quiet down, get your vestibular not to be screaming that you're dying. We really think we've already helped a whole batch of kids, but it'll be fun to see how many more we can help.
Well, I told you when we met a few weeks ago, I was that kid. I was into my very early teens and still wet in the bed. And I'd almost died in a house fire and I had night terrors. And so it's pretty evident now, with knowledge that I have today, why that was a thing. Ironically, there was like a wire mesh because my brother did as well. And you put this wire mesh under the sheets and the moment it got wet, it would make a noise. And the thought of having to have that as well, one day I stopped. So it kind of makes me think, okay, well, even though, yes, there were some pretty obvious reasons trauma-wise why, that behavior was happening, I wonder if something like vestibular training would have been that missing piece just to push me over the edge. And ever since then, that was it. Dry forever until I get to my 80s and start peeing myself again.
It's all going to happen. Prepare yourselves, people. But, it's just all these, I talk about real life, you know what I mean? Like real life things that just these little things can help. And to give a kid confidence again, that just tears me up. I'm always a sucker for kid projects, but to see this really change one kid's future in a level of confidence that it's really exciting. And it's so fun to see the kids kind of come from, I talk about kind of cornball kids that show up in my training room and kids that leave that are these little baby Einsteins. And you can just see that reset and that calm and that zen and the flow. And you can just see the kids just have a new sense of confidence that they just didn't have. Let's send those kids out into the world. There's your future leaders, but that's just your future and your kids and your family. And I just keep going back to real life and things that matter. We can help with that. We want to be a part of that story.
My father-in-law and I think even my mother-in-law now both have had kind of sudden onset vertigo. And you mentioned about, the degradation of the inner ear as we age. What are you seeing as far as people with vertigo specifically and some of the benefits from this?
So what vertigo really is shown, to my understanding clinically, is that of the 3 semicircular canals, they get a pooling of gel on one side and the other sides go dry. And that's where the whole world flips upside down. And boy, is that terrifying. If you've ever had a bout of vertigo, it could be seconds or minutes or months or years. Oh my gosh, it's terrifying and truly debilitating to not be able to walk. You got to crawl to the bathroom. If you ever had a big dizzy spell, you can really, really relate to these people's pain. So they're actually, of all the groups that work with me, they're the group that's the most afraid, because what they've really done is in an effort to cut down in their mind on the vertigo is they're not moving their heads. Okay, they're really, really holding their head still because turning their head and moving their head, they don't want to have another bout of vertigo. And so they really hold that head still, which makes it worse. Okay. The old, well, I'm a fall risk. I'll just stay in bed all weekend. There's some problems that really come down from it. And of course, the spinning looks terrifying to them. Although I always talk about on our gear, so many of our videos, of course, are the crazy, fast, fun, shocking videos. But I have videos of literally people doing one turn. Okay, one turn. And my face looks so unimpressed in the video. I always look oh, so unimpressed. But that one turn is where we start, and so for people with vertigo and that aging community, we're actually working on a huge project with a bunch of senior housing groups. I'm coming for you. Brace yourself. It's coming to the senior housing, active living places, because really that one turn can just start to get that gel to flow. And then, you know what, later in the week, we're going to do 2 turns or only 1.5, like we can just slowly build that up. I always talk about my mom. She's 79 and she's so good on this gear. My mom is cooking on this thing, like my mom's super good at it. And so is one of my aunties who had a ton of balance problems. Like she couldn't put on her shoes because once you put her head down, she just fall off the chair. Like time to put her shoes on. And now she's putting her shoes on. She's moving all over. She joined a walking program. She's doing water aerobics. So like if I can get more confidence, then I can build that out into just way more active everyone versus I'm a fall risk. I'm going to lay in bed all the weekend.
Yeah. It's what I saw when CBD first kind of came out. It wasn't the magic pill, but what it did is it would bolster whatever was fragile to then allow you to progress. And a great story is one of the guys I worked with in the last fire department. His mother was hit with, I think it was hip pain, like really, really debilitating hip pain. And she was bedridden. And he'd asked me about it because I took CBD, and I told him, all about it, and it was 0 THC, so there was no kind of psychotropic side whatsoever. And I sent him where I got it from, and that was it. And then 2 or 3 months later, he messaged me out of the blue and said, "Hey, not only is my mom out of the bed, but now she's going to physical therapy and the gym, and that's obviously what's ultimately going to fix whatever the issue was." But it got her back on her feet. And it's the same with what you're talking about. You get someone who's elderly and now they're not afraid of simply moving around. Now they're walking, now they're doing some resistance exercises. They're getting out in the daylight and their bones are going to be stronger, their muscles are going to be stronger. And then therefore their fall risk goes even lower then.
And it's so fun to watch. Just the confidence, like my mom's almost 80, driving everywhere, busy. She's busy. My mom is really busy. And I love that. It's really fun to watch my mom's confidence. And actually, okay, my mom loves me. Yeah, whatever. But she's not going to buy into something she's not going to buy into. Like my mom is she does what she does, how she does it. She's not going to be talked into something. The group is kind of, we're all difficult. Okay, so that just sums it up. But she wanted to go do one of those Viking riverboat cruises over in Europe. And I'm like, Mom, you fall all the time. And this was like, a good 6 years ago. And she wanted to go do this. I'm like, Mom, like on the boat, off the boat, up the bus, down the bus. Those stairs on buses are brutal. The cobblestones, the churches, Europe is on level, Mom. So I convinced her to train with me for 6 weeks before she left. She did it, loved it. Okay, like, I'll be honest, she'd fight me if she didn't love it, and she loved it. So she loved it. She went to Europe, had a great time, international flights, no falls, had a wonderful time. And a couple of her little old lady friends fell on the trip and kind of ruined their trips. And so she talked about, she really had the buy-in. And then, of course, talked my auntie into it and my other auntie into it. And, my family wouldn't keep doing this if they didn't believe in it, and even like my concussion people, I've one of my favorite concussion clients, he's been with me going on almost 2 years, and he's there every single Wednesday, never skips, never misses. I'm the one who's traveling, who's missing days, but he is always there. And he wouldn't be there if it didn't help.
Speaking of that, talk to me about some of the high level sports, special teams, etc. that you do work with.
Okay, I get to work, the group keeps expanding. I got to work with the world champion jiu-jitsu kid over at Westside Barbell. How fun was that? I got to work with a whole batch of Navy SEALs. They talk about some of the greatest athletes on the planet in a weird resiliency group with weird training that the rest of the world would never have had. They're fascinating to watch their brains. A little scary too. I'm just gonna take a second on that. There's some scary human beings out there. I work with them. I got to work with the Minnesota United goalie, Major League Soccer, who just got named Goalie of the Year, Dane St. Clair. So, but I worked with him prior to him being the Goalie of the Year. So, but really fun projects. I work with so many athletes. I do work with a lot of hockey just because the group's pretty concussed. I'm getting more and more, of course, football players. I got the honor of working with Art Still, who is like Kansas City Chiefs. He's in their Hall of Fame. Like, amazing. Okay. The man is like 6'8". So I always joke about my 4'10" next to his 6'8". You know, is really, and our feet next to each other are hilarious. But I got to work with him and even his family, you know, so I'm amazed at how many people come in for them, yet they bring their family as additional people to come work with me. And I'm also fascinated how many professional athletes' wives bring them to me. So the A+ wife married the A+ professional athlete, and as he's struggling with all of these concussions and health and issues, decades after the sport, she's still an A+. And so she's really trying to save her husband. I work with so many wives that come and bring their husbands to me, which is an honor. You know, I'm also fascinated in the weird internal no marketing system we kind of have, other than LinkedIn, is that people bring more people. Like, you know, well, you helped me so much. Would you help my brother? Or, you know, my niece. Could you help my niece? You know, oh, wait a minute, I have a sister. You know, one of my best friends is a coworker. Could you help them too? So like, I constantly have more and more calls, which is so fun within the company that we really don't market. We just LinkedIn video and people find us. You know, it's shocking. It's fun to see.
When you Google what is the most effective marketing, because I've been through a lot of BS with people that supposedly say that they can analyze podcasts and find data and all that stuff, and it's rubbish. It's the most effective marketing is word of mouth, is hearing from a product from someone that you trust. And this is what I do when I have my sponsors. I just tell the story, and then it layers, and people go, okay, well, if it's on the show and James stands behind it, then, you know, I would hope that people think it's good, and therefore, you know, you get this domino effect. But I agree 100%. You mentioned about firstly the wives. My wife came with me, and she certainly has seen some things from my career that she's trying to help with. But also you mentioned the goalie, and her coming from the optometry world. She was fascinated with that particular individual having blind spots, and therefore obviously being a detriment to his certain sport. So talk to me about what the challenges were, and then what the outcomes were after the therapy.
So he came to me via his OT. So one of his physical therapists and his OT had brought him into me. And so there's a blind spot bottom right they had kind of discovered. So what we did is we spun, and then we were chucking rubber ducks at him like a lunatic. I went through like 100 rubber ducks. I just kept chucking ducks at him. I'm not very good at throwing. So like he really had to block because they was kind of super random. I'm not a good thrower. I mean, that's a weird non-skill I have. But he blocked bottom right, spin, 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 block, 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 bottom right, up, upper left, upper right, down, bottom right, bottom right, bottom right. And we just kept spin and throw and spin and throw and spin and move his head and spin and move his head and spin and move his head, block, block, block. It was just a super active movement. Like it sounds weird. He wasn't just standing there in the harness on the spinner. He was flying, he was moving that head, he was spinning, he was blocking. It was, and I have to tell you, it was the longest spin session I've ever given. Okay, I really joke, people are in and out in 4 or 5 minutes, you know, done. Oh my gosh, he was spinning for like an hour. We just kept spinning this kid, different directions, and head and move and arms and elbows and over his head and behind him, and, you know, and boy, what a goalie, you know, like this kid. And I do have to say the photos of us together, because once again, God, Dane's got to be like 6'4", and the kid has this huge wingspan on him. And just standing next to me, I just look like I'm 4'10", and like, oh, I look so ridiculous standing next to him. So I joke I never make the photos because it's him, and then I just get cut out of the photo. I'm just too short. So, but yeah, but it was fascinating to see. But okay, but what do we already know? Okay, your eyes connect to your body. You know, your eyes and your ears are moving your body. We know that. If the football play is breaking left, my left knee just didn't break left. My brain and my eyes, my ears told my left knee we're breaking left and we're going left now. And you can always in plays see the person that isn't quite with it. You know, they're like breaking right because they didn't see the whole thing move left. And NFL analyzes those videos ad nauseum of who's moving, where they're moving, how they're getting there, how do you cut it off, how do you bring it forward. Like, they have done so much analysis to the point they probably know more than all of us combined, like in how do you move a team in unison, fascinating.
What about on the mental health side? Obviously, we talked before about, if we go for performance, it's going to help a lot of that other side too. But with people that have come to you with anxiety, depression, PTSD, whatever the things were, what are some of the success stories there?
The first one is always sleep. Okay, like, to be honest, that's where I always think I kick people immediately. My concussion people, I'll talk about, they went home from the session feeling a little overwhelmed. And the first thing they did was they took their first real nap in months or years. And my PTSD guys, they all talk about sleep. Okay, like that's their number one hiccup they can't seem to correct. And the US military and some of my SEALs have told crazy stories about drugging the guys to sleep and drugging them awake. And, wow, like, talk about the huge drop in their testosterone, to the point, how I learned about it was one of my SEALs was talking about, yeah, I got a 6-year-old and a 17-year-old. And I, of course, I got to give him a hard time about that. And he's like, no, we were trying the whole time. But I was on the sleep program that was so messed up, and my testosterone was so screwed up that, it was 11 years between kids because the testosterone was so messed up. So sleep, number one thing. If I can give anyone any real sense of calm, it's sleep. And my own story, like when my kids were little and they weren't sleeping, I cried a lot. I cried all the time as a young mom. My kids started sleeping. I've been fine ever since. Okay, but what's the first thing when you start messing with sleep? That's the number one. I think that's where the tragedies start, is with the lack of sleep. Also, according to the military too, the guys would go 2 days with no sleep and hit such a manic state that the suicide was unstoppable, much less the violence tied to it of killing the dog and the neighbors or the kids or the family, or, like the catastrophic situation they claim was unstoppable because of the 2 days of no sleep. Okay, but then the answer is, of course, well, wait a minute. It is stoppable if we would have correct the sleep over that 2 days, and so like sleep, number one issue to the whole thing. Can I get you some better sleep? West Side Barbell, in just a quick 2-week down and dirty, everyone just checked in with their Oura rings and Apple Watches, showed a 72% improvement in sleep. Okay, and if I can get you to sleep, is your life better? Hell yeah. But what about the other things? We talk about mental health, but we talk about sleep, but the anxiety and the balance. So one of the things we're seeing a lot of is, especially teenage girls with crazy levels of anxiety. Okay. And I'm not just talking about, oh, I'm nervous. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, suicidal, like one of my 12-year-olds I work with in Pennsylvania hugged me, and she said that 4 kids in her middle school 4 girls had killed themselves that year of school. I mean, so I'm talking, this is real. This is real life. This is real families. And when we talk about anxiety, I'm not dismissive of it. I'm talking, what's the root? And a lot of the root is your brain knowing that you're not moving enough and your balance is off. So your brain is screaming, our balance is off. We're dying. Fire. There's something wrong. And really the base step is their vestibular system and their balance is off. But then we can all go back again to screen time and computer time and not doing real things. A real experience, going outside, looking at a tree, hitting a tree in the face. You know what I mean? Like real things happening to you is really, really key.
Well, sleep is everything. And I talk about this all the time because people listening, if they're in the best of work weeks of working 24 hours straight with 72 hours off, if they are in the average, they're doing 24 hours on, 48 off, which is, debilitating, and then a lot of them are understaffed. So now you're looking more like 48 on, 24 off, and you said the 2 in a row. Yeah, if you're well rested, you can deal with that. But if you're starting to get towards crisis, I always underline that there are 3 areas that we know sleep deprivation is used deliberately: special forces selection, torture, and interrogation. That's it. So you have someone, like you said, everything from the mental health crises to the testosterone depletion to the cancers. I mean, it's all tied to sleep deprivation. It's not the only thing, but it's a massive amplifier. So with this technology, again, being able to help people downregulate and therefore get a better quality of sleep, it's going to be a huge interest of people listening. And what would be amazing would be, for example, it doesn't have to be in every single station, but in a central located station, having your platform in there as well. Because as I saw, it literally is just a handful of minutes and you're done. And it's something that,
right, you're there,
you
you're
could do.
in and out. Yeah, I talk all the time about, I also see ourselves in hospitals. So once again, as you take that second shift, as you take that third shift, okay, that you have to go into a neuro lab, re-kick your brain between over extended days so that you give Mrs. Anderson 2 milligrams, not 22 milligrams, because you're so tired. And Mrs. Anderson's dead. Okay. Because you haven't slept in 2 days, I look at all the real life stuff, but I also talk about like basic scheduling. Like I have a whole thing on, could the schedulers do this schedule? I always joke that like a computer or someone down in an office wrote the schedule and they don't even live that schedule. And so how are they writing the schedule? You go live the schedule for 2 months, and it just seems so fixable. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like that's so fixable to be on a normal schedule. I actually decades ago pitched the idea of 24-hour schools, so that the kids could get on the same schedule as the parents. So if you work the night shift for UPS, your kids could go to school during the night shift, and then that way the whole family's on the same schedule for even sleeping. If you need more of an afternoon slot for school, then you could do morning sports and then go to school in the afternoon. Like we could run a school totally differently. But then as a teacher, your husband's on the firefighting night shift. Now you could work the night shift. So once again, we're all together on the same sleep schedule. I thought I was brilliant. I don't know if it's good. I'm not sure if I can work it, but I thought I was brilliant,
Well, I think what's exciting now with robotics, with AI, all the things that used to require humans that just don't anymore, get that to happen during the night. Everyone goes to bed, almost everyone, except the few people that we need to, to be there for the most acute things, the first responders, the hospitals, things that, are imperative. Because our generation, when we were young, we survived without 24-hour gas stations and all the shops being open on Sundays. And, that was up until very, very recently, those weren't even a thing. So, there are definitely some professions that need to be awake, but I would argue that most don't. We've just created this false world. But how many people really go to a store at 4 a.m?
Nobody. No, I don't. I'm sleeping hard. The other thing too, I interviewed a bunch of kids. I just stood at the front door of the rink and I'm like, hey, how much sleep did you get last night? How much sleep did you get? And every kid coming through, a lot of them, the answer was 6 hours. Mm-hmm. It was pretty much the average. A couple were like 8 hours, man, always get my 8 hours. And one kid was like, I got about like 3 hours of sleep. And I looked at her like, what are you doing? What do you have going on at, 4 a.m? You don't have anything going on. Okay, now, no, this is what you were doing. You were screwing around on your phone and you're doom scrolling, you're not sleeping. Okay, so now we have a whole thing on choices made, but the health of what those choices are creating too. But like we had high school kids not getting even a solid 7 hours, the majority of them. Okay, so now, once again, where's that leading us down what road?
Yeah.
Like, why can't a 16-year-old get 8 hours of sleep? I just got to ask. Michael Phelps, swimmer. His training program had a 10-hour a night sleep schedule and a nap every day. But he could come in ready to work. He didn't come dragging in like he had only 6 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially if you look at the different younger ages, when they're really young, obviously need a lot of sleep, then it starts going down. But when you get to the teenage years, it actually goes up again. And they're supposed to have about 10. So, you think about a teenager that's getting 6, that's 4 hours deficient every single night. And then we wonder why they're so damn grouchy when they're teens. One of the things, maybe they're not sleeping enough.
They're lunatics. I know. I raised 2. Like, it was hard. But we really tried to do sleep here at our family. You know what I mean? Like, earlier to bed, take a bath beforehand, like all of these little pieces, the house is cooler, at night so that everyone sleeps better. And, little things, no, don't let the dog sleep with you. You know what I mean? Like, because the dog's going to wake you up. We have huge dogs. So like, they're going to wake you up, no dogs in kids' beds, So like, there's all these little things that really, they just seem really obvious to me on a lot of levels. That once again, I don't need a paper that teenagers need more sleep.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I can see it. I can see it. Like I have a whole thing on papers. Yeah, there's some great academic papers out there, but there's also like
common sense.
Common sense. Like could we see a little more common sense? That'd be great.
Yeah, my son didn't have a TV in his room till literally a few months ago, and he's 18 now. So I managed to keep it out the whole time, and then he went to bed up until probably 16. He went to bed at 9 o'clock pretty much every single night, from baby all the way through, because that, they get up at 6. That's a solid 9-10 hour, sleep every single time. But it's not so early that they're kind of waking up in the middle of the morning either. But yeah, it's a very simple thing. If you lay the groundwork at the beginning and make it the norm and just continue that, they never question it.
Yep. No, we're big believers. I skated morning ice as a kid. And for years I coached morning ice, and I was so happy when one of my athletes quit. I was like, no more morning ice. I'm a princess now. Like, I don't have to teach morning ice. It was great. My life improved dramatically when that athlete left me. It was great. Best of luck to her.
Well, let's talk about the technology then. Tell people, kind of describe what it is, and then, talk to me about where, the kind of organizations you think that should be purchasing in it, and let's talk about the training that goes along with it.
So it's really easy gear to run. I talk all the time about, I have 8-year-olds that run it for their parents. Okay, like it's really easy gear. You literally set the speed and the direction, and you step on the pedal. It's that simple. Easier than driving a car. Ultimately, we're working with everyone with a brain. And that has been the huge, super fascinating part of our product. From the aging to the autism to the Parkinson's to the concussions to the elite athletes to the world champions to the Olympians to 14-year-old kids that don't stay dry at night. All of it, we're just working with everyone. And it's been an honor. Like, I tear up at this too, of like how many people we've worked with. We have master trainers all over the country, all over the world. Obviously those numbers are growing. I want to say I'm almost done, but I'm not quite. Let's be honest. I got a couple more months to go. We'll have the online certification program done. But really, the system right this second is people come and train with me here in Minneapolis, or I fly to them and train their staff anywhere in the world. So it's been really fun. I travel a lot. I have a lot of people coming to visit, which makes for the fun of it. I saw you down in Tampa. And the really fun part of our company is we really feel like the goal is we're American-made, manufactured. Everything's made here in the States. And we even have a batch of vets that work for us, which is hilarious staff meetings, by the way. So I have a batch of vets, bunch of general population specialists that help me make the product. But then the goal is to get the product in the hands of one specialist. And that one unit and that one specialist can help 1,000 people. What's their specialty? Fire department, okay, like mental health, EMDR specialists, schools, teachers, special ed, sports people, universities, colleges, pro teams, like all of those. We really have sales into every facet, which of course is super exciting in the fact of how many people could you help? The answer is billions. How many people are on the planet? Okay. All you need is a plug-in, and away you go. Really easy gear to really apply to each person. And like I said, we just start slow, and everyone's got their own threshold. And it's just trying to find that little, just bring them up to that nice, gentle activation, and we're done, we move on. So if you did it at the beginning of a workout, could you have a shorter workout because you just moved better through the whole workout? Could we cut down some of the training time, especially on some of these pro athletes? And some rehab that are exhausted. I talk about you can only train from the neck down so much. Could we kick from the neck up and get a lot done that could save time in other places? So yeah, it's super easy gear. And are we doing more? Yes. Do we have control? It's coming. The online class will be done soon. It's on the list. I'll get there. So
where are the best places to learn more and even sign up to be a trainer or purchase equipment?
So the first place to start is our website, good old spinyourbrain.com. Just start there. Start at our website, spinyourbrain.com. And there's tons of videos and different kind of groups. And I'll be honest, it's an okay website, but at least get you started. Enough to come track down more of our trainers. Message us. We'll get you a trainer somewhere near you. Obviously, as we sell more and more, we're also doing a project with Lifetime Fitness. Okay, what? I'm so excited. So we'll be coming to all of the Lifetime Fitnesses, but it's a slow rollout. It'll take a year and a half, 2 years, to really get into all the Lifetimes. But we worked with Bram, their CEO. Came to train with me. Busy man, 44,000 employees. He's come and trained with me several times, and he loves the gear. Built out a whole neuro lab at their flagship location in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. So it's a wonderful neuro lab that we're a centerpiece of. So good old Lifetime Fitness. As we grow and grow, we'll be in more and more places, more and more availability. I still really want to do more in schools. Just saying, like it's a slow slog there, but we'll get there too. But we really want to be in more schools, helping all the kids.
I love that idea as well. When you're thinking again about the mental health side, the trying to stay dry, at night. I mean, all these elements. It's such a non-invasive, safe way of training whoever. That if this guidance counselor listens to a kid for 50 minutes and at the end of the session just gives them a 5-minute spin. I mean, the potential was amazing. So, my wife, really kind of felt dialed in after it. I've done 2 sessions now. Becky didn't do the second one. And I'm going to be going down a few more times because as you saw on some of my scans, there was some concussion leaning results initially. So add shift work to it. I think I've got a little more work ahead of me. So I'm excited to see what that improvement looks like.
Well, and we love it, we just think it's fun. It's easy. It's non-invasive, it really, the goal is, I have a lot of athletes that are in and out in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. They're in, they're out. I have a treat basket. The treat bucket is kind of fun. The kids fall for that. I have marketed it a little bit, but the kids feel a difference, and they like it and they enjoy it and it's fun and it's challenging and it's fun when like 6 or 7 are standing in the room and we just rotate through all the kids and they cheer each other on and they coach each other and there's tricks to it, but there's a lot of midline crossing, which, just the basics of midline crossing, what that does for the brain. So I got the feet crossed, the hands crossed, they're spinning, they're, I'm throwing things. It's a really fun time. So what's not to enjoy about it? It really is. We have kids that even when they leave the sport, still come back and still do my classes and still book time. And I think that really says a lot, that even when you leave, you still want to do it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to throw a few closing questions at you before I let you go. The first one I'd like to ask, is there a book or are there books that you'd love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
The most completely unrelated one is the book called The Talent Code. Okay, so The Talent Code is phenomenal. I should know the author, I don't. Anyway, it's great because he really talks about how you build an athlete and people that really know how to develop and how they can create phenomenal athletes with different programs. And out of that book, they talked about like Brazilian soccer is one of the examples, okay, of that they really had the kids learn in a really small room, like almost like a tiny closet, is where the kids were given the ball. And so the kids learned to control the ball in a small space rather than chasing the ball for the whole practice out on a big field. But the kids learned ball control so much faster in this small space when you limited their space. Out of that book, USTA and a couple others learned that you could run tennis not lengthwise, because the kids really couldn't volley it back and forth. They ran it sideways, made the space smaller so that the kids could really, they got a slower ball, which was the advent of pickleball. Just saying, the advent of pickleball came out of slowing the ball and having a smaller space that you could really participate in the sport and not spend your whole time chasing it. But even basketball and all these other sports have really looked at that book of the talent code of how do you train an athlete and how do you develop them? And where does real learning come into play versus just flopping around, which as coaches, we've seen it, we participated in it, but in the end, how does a kid and an athlete learn? And that's just a great book, The Talent Code. Highly recommend it.
Brilliant. What about film, television, or documentaries?
Okay, I recently saw the documentary, it's on the Disney Channel, about the people that saved the children in the cave. Do you remember that?
In Thailand.
Thailand. Okay, for sure you'll cry. Like, it is a stunning story of not just survival, but kindness, and how those divers, how the right people were in the right place at the right time. And it worked. It should not have worked. It should not have worked. And I just have chills telling the story. It was one of my favorite documentaries ever. Cried, totally cried.
Brilliant. I'll have to watch that then. All right. Well, the next question, is there a person that you recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
So, of course, I go back to the Biooptimization Institute. Trip and Jason, I think, are phenomenal and brilliant in their own stories of how they got to where they are. Very crazy backgrounds with talk about a success that is just joyful to see. I also have Kadrick Bloomquist out of Colorado Springs, who used to work for like Semper Fit. He designed whole workout programs for the Marine Corps, but he's out of Colorado Springs now, works with a lot of active guys, a lot of vets, some retired SEAL captains, commanders, is like really fascinating. But he, in his own story, is amazing, coming back from literally death to become a trainer, and what he's done with my equipment, even I'm impressed, which is kind of the fun part. It kind of goes back to that one specialist. They take my gear, but they give it a twist. Like, I'll be honest, like, he's added some extra pieces to my gear that I never thought of, and he's really elevated what he's doing with training with my gear. Colorado Springs, Kadrick Bloomquist. Happy to make introduction.
That would be amazing. Thank you. And yeah, Blake and Trip are coming on next month, I think it is as well. So I've already got that scheduled.
There we go. They're so good. I'm already ahead of myself. But yeah, no, like, I've met so many amazing people, and it's just been really fun to see them rise, and the big saying in our company is everybody wins. We're really an everybody wins kind of group. Could we help more? Can we see that kid be successful? Can we see that soldier be successful, especially coming back to society, and their wives and their children, and how do they interact, and how can we all find success and change the world, even if it's for just for one person, but how that affects their family.
Absolutely. All right. Well, then the last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you. What do you do to decompress?
I spin. That seems obvious. Okay. Like I spin a lot. And even in my videos on LinkedIn, I'm like, I'm spinning with the camera. But my favorite thing to do is I like to do hand quilting. Okay. So like at night, we stop talking about the company by 7:30 at night. There's no business talk after 7:30. Because if I talk about it up into bedtime, then I still think about it. I don't sleep well. So end of all business discussions with the family and my husband and other staff was done at 7:30 at night. And I do love to hand quilt, and it's just an up and down hand quilting. I got really teeny weeny little small stitches, and there's a very much a decompression to it. I'm starting a new quilt now. Like, I'm all excited. Finished one, on to the next. And I just heard something from one of my girlfriends that this whole Gen Z group, the whole goal lately has been to put their phones down and go do real things. The Gen Z group is that they want to go do real things. They want to play a real board game. They don't want to play it on their phone. And they've picked up, ready for this, granny projects. Okay, so like knitting, crocheting, quilting, sewing. They're calling it like granny crafting. And I'm like, wait, I'm not a granny, but yeah, I'll teach you how to hand quilt. Like I do love it. Like I really love some of that really slow, basic Zen. I can watch a Godzilla movie and just be quilt, 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 quilt. Oh, Godzilla. Yeah, okay, there we go. Got it. Okay. Quilt, quilt, quilt. Oh, another Godzilla section. Yeah, I don't know. Slower is better, especially before bed.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. The Gen Zs are actually going to the trades a lot more too. I think they're realizing that a lot of college programs just aren't worth it. Of course, if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, there's certain tracks that you have to go to college, but so many people have this massive debt and a piece of paper that doesn't guarantee them a job. So it's exciting actually for the first responder professions because the demand is there. We just have to fix what's broken in our profession to pull these people back in. But that's what I'm hearing about Gen Z, is that there's a kind of romanticization of our generation. And they're circling around now, our clothes, our music, and even, the tangible things that we used to have. So that's so good to hear.
Well, I have to tell you, in college, I dated a fireman. Let me tell you, it was a good time. I loved him. Didn't work out, but it was, he was a great guy. And, paramedics and firefighters and cops, they're a wonderful group of people that really need the support. But if I can go back and help them with their sleep, I just, in their balance. Although, just to jump into one last story, I worked with a set of cops here in the Twin Cities. So how do we pre and post test? They went and shot first at the range. So they shot first, came and worked with me, balance mat, spun, balance mat. They all improved. That was great. Went back to the range, reshot. And so far, and this can't even be a real number, so far, 100% of them significantly improved their shooting scores according to the different independent range masters in lots of different ranges. My favorite one, he'd been trying to qualify for SWAT for like 2 years, and he could do the state standard no problem, but when they backed him up 20 feet, he couldn't do it. And had been practicing and practicing and practicing. And so the day he trained with me, he passed his SWAT certification. And the range master, big dude, in my face, absolutely in my face, being like, how'd you do it? How did you do it? Did you drug him? And I'm like, no, I spun him. But the range master talked about his balance was so good that the target acquisition was faster through his eyes. So he found the target faster, but his draw was so much better because he didn't overdraw or underdraw. His balance was so stable that when he drew, he really had a perfect draw. And so, he passed a SWAT that day. No, I did not drug him, but yeah, it was, but the look too of the bright, alert, shiny eyes. I mean, you can tell I kicked something neurologically. When people come in with shark eyes and they leave with shiny, happy eyes, there's a difference. There's a big difference.
Absolutely. All right. Well, for people listening, if they want to learn more about you, reach out to you, where are the best places to do that?
Well, so the website, spinyourbrain.com, yay, whatever, it's a website. I do a lot on LinkedIn. So if you just track my name, Sheila Thelen, Thelen, it's just T with a Helen is how my last name is spelled. So T Helen. Just find me on LinkedIn. I really do a lot on LinkedIn. We have some stuff up on Instagram at Vestibular Training Services and Facebook, but whatever. We don't put a lot of effort into that. We don't put a lot of effort into a lot of things. Yeah, you social media people. Yeah, but our favorite thing, of course, is podcasts. And our favorite thing is a real story with real people, not filters and weird stuff. We We have a ton of great videos posted all over the place. So come enjoy our videos. But the website's a little better, but also on the website too is a whole bunch of academic papers that are published, in our new recent white paper with concussions. 22% improvement is all up on the website. And I encourage people to go learn more about vestibular. And the easiest place is pubmed.gov. Go read academic papers, go learn more about vestibular, because it's really controlling your life in a way that you need to educate yourself, just like calories, carbohydrates, sleep, steps are all part of the education we've all had in health. Okay, but vestibular is the big five coming on that people really need to understand that they don't. And I'm going to say even including your doctor doesn't quite understand vestibular, especially if they're a little older and it wasn't really covered in their education, unless they've stayed educated on it. There's a whole batch that the audiologists are saying that people are going to like 10 doctors before they're ending up really understanding vestibular and needing help.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. It's been, firstly, again, to try the technology, to see the results, and we'll talk about the other parts that we did, the oxygen, all that stuff in the interview with the lads. But it really is exciting, and it just makes sense. And that's the thing for me. If it makes sense, then I'm all in. If it doesn't, and it's snake oil, and just eat meat all day, the rest of your life, don't have any vegetables and fruit. Sorry, like it just doesn't make sense to me. Will it work for a short time? Are you eliminating the bad stuff? That part totally makes sense. But with this, with the fixed kind of element of modern society and losing that ability to move, just putting that back in again, and then also the high performance side, that that calm under chaos that we need, a lot of us listening now, I can absolutely see how that's applied as well. So I want to thank you so much, not only for showing me your technology in person, but for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me. Go spin. Have a great time. Go spin.